The new podcast, In the Shadow of Princeton, starts as the matriarch of a prominent Princeton family is found stabbed to death in her locked basement. Investigators look from a serial attacker to her family to Princeton University students. One hot-blooded investigator sees a conspiracy. Is he way off base, or does privilege let you get away with murder? In the Shadow of Princeton is available wherever you get podcasts, or you can binge it ad-free by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See detail.
Hey Giants fans, this is Chris Franklin from NJ Advanced Media, and welcome to the Talk is Cheap podcast, the show where we discuss everything related to the New York Giants. Now, before we begin, I want to make sure to remind you that you can read all of our content on NJ.com/Giants, and make sure to bookmark that to get the latest Giants news and analysis. Well, there's no way to sugarcoat this. That game last Sunday was flat out ugly, and that 28-3 loss, and Saquon Barkley returned to MetLife Stadium. Yeah, there's so much that you can really discuss, but yeah, we're not going to sugarcoat things in this episode on that. No. And to get into it, we're going to talk with my Talk is Cheap co-host, Ryan Novozinsky. Ryan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Chris. Sorry for speaking before the introduction there. I just had to get that out. I mean, you're right, man. I mean, there's no sugarcoating that one. I mean, we talked a little bit off air, but it's it starts off punt after punt after punt. It's looking like, okay, maybe this is going to be just kind of a rock fight here. And then Saquon happens. Maybe the most predictable. Like, I probably could have written that before the game, like pre-written the story. But maybe the most predictable result of all time. Although that first quarter did confuse me because I was like, man, is this? Because the Giant defense is good. I was waiting for Saquon to come to life, and evidently he did. So much so that not only did he come to life, he was, able to, he was willing to go break his, or Sirianni wanted him rather to go break his single game rushing yards record. And he almost pitied the Giants by saying, no, I'm good. I'm not going to do it. Just a terrible embarrassment for this Giants team all around. The home loss, another one. Haven't won at home this year. Only averaged 7.5 points at home this year. And for this to happen against Saquon, and for him to be as active, obviously, as he was, I mean, it's just another feather in the cap of Joe Shane, of John Mara, and of Brian Daboll. At this point, it's just terrible.
Yeah, and you think that, especially with Boston Scott no longer with the Eagles, you think that, maybe the curse of the running back goes away, and all of a sudden Saquon drops that 100-plus burger on him. That was crazy, and I would have loved to have been a fly on a wall inside Mara's suite with Joe Shane around and everything else, and just see if anything was said, and if it is, so what the heck was said, if anything, or what was his mood? Did he walk out, or pace around? That had to be really tough to see your former star or your division rival and racking up yards like that, especially with an offense that was only able to get 119 yards of total offense, struggled in third down, 3 of 14, which was ugly. It was just bad. 24 in the time of possession against this Eagles team that seems to struggle at times with that. Giants only had the ball 24 minutes, which that is, it's not going to win you many games, and you get out and get results like this. But we give you those offensive numbers, and the game was out of hand. But Daniel Jones was removed and in place for Drew Lock. The offense sputtered. They couldn't get anything done in the passing game. And I want to ask you this, Ryan. I know it was a blowout, and basically it's trying to save Daniel Jones's life at that point because he was getting hit so much with the 8 sacks. But do you think that the Giants should consider looking at Drew Lock a little bit more to be the starter going forward?
100,000% yes. And it's
Ooh.
honestly the reason being it's not even a skill thing, which it in a sense it is because Daniel Jones is not the greatest quarterback by any means. But I don't even think he's having like the worst year as a lot of Giants fans do. He's been rock solid, just rock solid, right? But he's not gonna win you games. Teams, I do think that you give him enough talent that a team can win with Jones as a quarterback. I'm not saying win a Super Bowl, but I think obviously you can go to the playoffs, win maybe a couple playoff games, but they're never going to win because of him. And that's the deep ball inaccuracies. That's the just head scratching decisions that he makes sometimes. I mean, there was a pick at the end of that Bengals game that was just, or near the beginning of the Bengals. I actually forget when it was. It feels like a lifetime ago now. That was just maybe the worst decision I've ever seen a quarterback make. Um, but the reason being, skill aside, rant aside, is this injury guarantee thing. With Andrew Thomas out, it changes the whole dynamic of the line. That's not even to say that Josh Azudu, who replaced him at left tackle, did a terrible job. I mean, he allowed 2 sacks, but he was by no means their worst lineman. That award, if you want to call it, goes to John Michael Schmitz, their center. But and this is just in that game against Philly. But it seems to be with the dynamic of Thomas being gone, the whole dynamic of the line just changes. And in that blind side, with Illuminor not really wanting to move over, but he might not have a choice this week. Jones is just going to get killed because you're either trusting Josh Azudu, who's not good, Evan Neal, who's a terrible draft bust. But I think they probably should put him out there just, in like hey, we're 2-5. Let's see what we have. Like, let's see if this first round pick can turn it around. Or DJ Humphries, who they, visited with the team yesterday, who's coming off a torn ACL. So all that being said, the line is in shambles right now. Jones has an injury guarantee. He's going to get killed playing behind this line, especially against TJ Watt, man. Come on. It's time. Like, I think, Dayball said that he's going to be the starter this week, and that's fine. That's probably like a pride thing from him and ownership and whoever else, mostly ownership. But his leash should be unbelievably short. Like, you see that sometimes, right? I think before Watson went down, I think that was a headline that was out there. It was like, all right, yeah, like Deshaun's the starter this week, but his leash is short, and DTR has been told, like, hey, like, get ready to go in like the second quarter or something like that. You see that oftentimes. I think this has to be one of those weeks for Daniel Jones. If things even trend even an iota towards what they were trending towards in that Eagles game, then yank him and never start him again this season. This should be, again, if it goes as badly as it did against the Eagles, and I think it might, then this should be the last that the Giants fans see of Daniel Jones in the Giants uniform.
You make some good points. I look at it from 2 other angles in terms of you really need to do this. When you look at Brian Dable, his job's we all know his job's on the line. Joe Shane's job's probably cooked now after Saquon ran a roughshod on him. But you look at this, he needs to find a way to get a spark. He needs to find a way to get something to save his job. And the most important position that you have on your team is underperforming. If for the life of this, like, hey, you know what, you put Drew Lock in, and he's able to be more accurate, able to get the ball out on time, get the quick throws that Dable always wants, and takes care of the ball, you're at 2-5. Are you going to be a Super Bowl team? Heck no, they're not. They're nowhere near a Super Bowl team. But if you want to have any dreams of looking like, hey, you know what, we cobbled things down the stretch. I'm a competent coach who can lead this team in the future 2-3 years from now. You need to do something and make a spark. You need to do something. You just need to do something. And I think replacing Daniel Jones, like you said, with that injury guarantee, keep him on the side. Say, you know what, you future endeavor him. We thank you for your services. We'll see you down the line when you face us. We hope to see you down the line when you face us because we know what you can do. And then I just also look at the fact that if that doesn't work with Drew Lock, you're getting a better draft pick. You need a better draft pick because you're going to need to select a quarterback. And so it's a win-win. I know Dable won't like that, if I'm Mara, I'm thinking about that. Like, look, make the change, do it from up top. And if he doesn't want to do it, find an interim head coach. Do something like that. You need to do something because it's you look at the future of this team and this franchise, and there's too many questions, and I don't know where they go from here. They've been muttered in mediocre. You have the playoff year you had in 2022, 2023. You have that playoff year. Okay, good. But you look at so many of those other years that you've been with, it's been nothing but, excuse me for saying, it's been nothing but crap. And you need to do something, and you need to find a way to just give the fans something to hang on to. So, yeah, it's just bad. Am I going way too far in that thinking?
No, not at all. I mean, that's the thing. It's when things like this happen, the offense right now is inept, right? And that's is under Jones, right? If you're not going to involve the run game, and they really did not this past week against the Eagles, despite Tyrone Tracy having a really strong couple weeks there in replacing Devin Singletary. If you're not going to do that, you got to do something else. And this you owe it to your defense, who's top 10 unit in the league. Like, my goodness, I thought that, early on, I was like, you saw how many sacks they got, Chris. Like it was wild. You get Brian Burns, obviously. You get Dexter Lawrence, who has already passed his career high in sacks. You're wasting a year of dominance from Dexter Lawrence. I mean, geez, like, he's already almost had double-digit sacks. He's at 9. He would be the defensive player of the year if he had even a competent offense. And I'm not saying that Drew Lock gives them that, but Daboll owes it to the players in his defense that are grinding it out week in and week out, and to make some sort of change, just to experiment. Like, hell, if it doesn't work, like, put him back in. Like, I don't know. Like, his confidence, right now isn't even high. So, you might as well just kind of, put a fire under him or something like that. I don't know, man. You're definitely not going too far, though. I'm not saying Drew Lock is the answer. I'm not saying Tommy DeVito is the answer, but the answer is not Daniel Jones, and none of them have to be the long-term answers. Nobody on this roster has to be the long-term answer by no means. But for the right now, you got to try something, because it's one of those things. You heard it in New England last week, right? There a couple weeks ago. They were talking about, mutiny maybe, because the defense was playing well. Jacoby Brissett was still in at quarterback. And, that was before they made that decision to move to May. Now, I'm not saying that Drew Lock or Tommy DeVito's May, but it's something else, man. You got to try something else when this isn't working.
Yeah, at the very least, put Lynn Drew Lock. He beat the Eagles last year. Might as well
Sure.
tried it that week. It was bad. It's just whole bad. But when you're a bad team, when you're 2-5 like the Giants are, and things continue to go downhill, all of a sudden the trade deadline pops up, and we're approaching it. November. It's on election day this year, which I thought was kind of funny that you have it at 4 p.m. and yeah, people are starting to vote, and people are going to be in line probably waiting to vote, and they're looking on their phones feverishly. Did we make a move? Did we make a move? Did we add? No. Oh, yeah, by the way, yeah, we got to choose somebody in the voting booth. But anywho, yeah, the trade deadline has come fast approaching. We've seen some teams already make moves, which DeAndre Hopkins was Titans traded DeAndre Hopkins to the Chiefs, which is like, what the
That was a
heck is
weird
going
little
on?
alarm clock this morning, huh?
It was this whole thing. This some of these moves already have just been crazy. Like, nobody wants wide receivers anymore. They're like the higher paid. Like, yeah, you might as well get rid of them. And the fact they got them for a fifth that could turn to a 4th round pick is just crazy. And when you look at this Giants roster, I'm going to ask you, Ryan. And when I'm looking at this, A, do you think they'll be able to make a move? And B, who's even a tradable part?
Oh, man. I mean, the two that I look at now, man, what sucks about this is that ownership has so much pride that I don't know if they will go end up be like actual like sellers. But if they do end up being sellers, which is the smart thing to do, the two guys they have to move on from, number one is Darius Slay, and I know we've discussed this before. Number two is Azeez Ojulari. Because that dude I mean, he already has more sacks than Kayvon, in replacing him just 2 weeks ago. He's a former 2nd round pick, I believe, out of Georgia, he broke, when he was a rookie, he broke the the rookie sack record, franchise record for the Giants, for somebody not named Lawrence Taylor because they didn't track them back then. But that's still a crazy number of sacks. Like this is a guy who, he's been in and out. He was more just, put in pass rush situations early in the year, but now he's in a kind of a starting role with Thibodeau down. And look, the Giants really aren't going anywhere. If I'm playing Madden and I'm, trying to get the most value out of this team, I give up Ojulari to a team that needs a pass rusher. I mean, we talk about all the time. We talk about, the Lions need one right now. Goodness, I can't even think on the top of my head other teams that need them. I mean, I think we talked about the Bengals being a pretty putrid pass rush team in comparison to years past, obviously. Yeah, like there are teams that need that right now. And, I think you can get some value. Minnesota could use a pass rusher. Sell high on this kid who's having a good couple weeks here in starting for Thibodeau. This is literally the perfect candidate. He's on the last year of his deal. You don't really need him. You got Thibodeau, you got Burns, moving forward. Sell him while the value is high. And same thing with Slayton, in that week where he took over in the number one role for Malik, he did pretty well. There are wide receiver desperate teams. You can't tell me that the Chargers couldn't use a Darius Slayton right now. So I don't know, man. Those are really the two that I can think of. I think they'd be pretty foolish not to explore. If the Rams are exploring a Cooper Kupp trade, the Giants can explore a freaking Ojulari or Slayton trade. That's what I'll say.
When I look at this, it's a bad time for them to even try to trade Slayton now, because if you got Cooper Kupp sitting around there, and it was like, yeah, we can do this. Unless you want to if you get a team that's trying to add to their wide receiver depth, their big sells. Well, Kupp was on there, DeAndre Hopkins. We have Darius Slayton, and we paid the conditional 6th or 5th. Crowd goes mild on that one in terms of that. But Ojulari, you make a great point on that, and teams can never have enough pass rushing from the edges. It is tough. And I could see him fitting on the Giants. I mentioned we all know about Aiden Hutchinson's injury, which is still, I can't watch that. It's rough on that.
Mm-hmm.
But I look at it and I'm like, you mentioned it all comes down like tomorrow, and I don't know if they should make a deal. They need as many draft assets as possible. I wonder that one. The scenario I would love is if Philly called, because even though I know it's weird talking like after a game where they had 8 sacks. They haven't gotten that much out of their edge rushing. Bryce Huff finally got his first sack of the year. Nolan Smith is coming along. Ojulari will help him, but we all know that whole thing about trading within a division. So
right.
Good luck on that.
Especially after last week. I don't think Mara's doing anything. Shane's doing anything with that.
Yeah, very much so. And the team I think will be really an intriguing one, even though they got Matt Judon, shipping him back to Georgia to go to the Atlanta Falcons, because they're a team where they've gone so long without having an edge rusher, and now they have Judon and Ojulari would just add to that right now, and I think they'll be able to do that and have good. Problem is, you look at their significant draft assets, not that many, because they trade up to get Michael Penix, which still for the life of me that's a weird deal out there. Well, I'll ask you this one too. On a scale out of 100%, the chances that Giants try to acquire somebody.
Oh.
Over under is at 9.5. Do you think it'll over under?
You know what? I'm going the under if this is an over under thing. I think it's not going to happen unless that somebody is, a freaking. I wish it was like the NBA where you could trade 2029 picks or whatever. Like you see that much more often in the NBA, of course. Where it's like, we could sit here and say they traded for they traded for a dude who's in, second grade right now or something like that. You know what I mean? But it's no, I think that the only person that they will acquire is the rights to draft like you said, a conditional 6th round pick or something like that next year. So, someone from Tulane or I don't even know university.
Hey, go AAC, American Athletic
Conference.
Right. Go them. Yeah. Woo. Yeah, sorry. And now we're going to turn our attention to the upcoming game against the Steelers team that soundly beat the Jets. they made the quarterback change before moving on from Justin Fields and having Russell Wilson. And he actually looked pretty good in his debut. Started out slow, and all of a sudden he realized, hey, he must have thought he was back in Seattle, and in his early time, he actually was slinging the ball around. And you all know the importance, as we're talking about edge rushers are trying to disrupt them. Do you think that the Giants pass rush will be able to impact Russell Wilson and at least keep them in the game?
I think kind of like that's the one constant this year. With this Giants pass rush, it has been the pass rush, right? Like they had maybe a handful of bad games early on. I think it was the first game against Minnesota. The Washington game was just okay. Either way, like regardless of what it was, they only had a couple outliers there where early on you're wondering, oh man, is this the outlier or is this just what the Giants pass rush is? No. Those were the outliers. Giants pass rush is really good. Obviously applying pressure and it's really like a next man up thing. Like we talked about with Ojulari, like he steps in and immediately is able to fill that Kayvon role nicely. Now, the one thing is, Pittsburgh doesn't have a great pass blocking offensive line either. So I have no doubt that they're going to be able to kind of pressure Russell Wilson. However, I don't think it's going to win them the game because, you look at this Giants line and how it's in shambles right now. It was starting to do really well, really good, and finally had chemistry. First time in years, Giants had at least a solid offensive line. But I think with, TJ Watt and company coming to town and the best pass rush in the country coming to town, I think the Giants, it'll be a tale of last week, right? Like it'll be a decent defensive performance, at least early on, and then they'll lose motivation because the offense just puts together just a crapshoot of a performance. So, I think the real story is the Steelers pass rush, but of course, I never discount what the Giants pass rush can do. Honestly, the rest of the season is just going to be the only positive storyline I'm really looking forward to happening is just how many sacks Dexter Lawrence could put up. I mean, this dude is a freaking nose guard, and he's doing all this.
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy. Like I want to see if he gets near Aaron Donald territory and really start. And people go like, okay, yeah. If this Giants team, this is why I kind of wish this Giants team was at least relevant in terms of playoff position, because I really think with Hutchinson going down, with the Lumber's injuries, I think he was at the point where he would have won Defensive Player of the Year. Mm-hmm. He really would have. So now he's at the point where he needs to get edge rusher numbers in terms of sacks, like 18, 20 to be in contention. I just don't think it'll happen because of the team he plays for, which is unfortunate because you like to see that he's earned that right to be listed among them and earn the right to win that award. Mm-hmm. And I look at the term in terms of getting back to the Steelers. I in this game, this is a game where I wish that Devin Singletary, Tyrone Tracy Jr., and Eric Ray really truly formed like the old Earth, Wind, and Fire backfield that the Giants had previously, where you just pound the ball, you keep the Steelers offense off to the side. It's not like they're world beaters, but enough that you keep them on the side. And you're effective enough that you're wearing down Watt. You're wearing down the rest of that defense to the point where it's an ugly, low-scoring game. You're keeping your defense fresh in case they come out on the ball, and then you can play ball control, but you just don't know with this offensive line. You kind of wish that you wish Andrew. If I'm Andrew Thomas, I'm looking like, see, you guys really need me, huh? Kind of miss me now, don't you? It's what's like that. So I just wish they had that run game if they do, or if they're able to do it, run the ball. Make it ugly. I don't care if it looks like 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Just do that. Keep that Steelers offense on the sideline. But what's a matchup you're looking for in this game that you're looking forward to watching?
Oh man, I would honestly like I'm putting it. I know we've talked about it already, but the one thing I'll mention is that pass rush. I mean, I just that's the one thing each week where you can it almost looks like when you go and watch like games around the league, like versus this Giants team, it's like you're kind of like looking at a different sport almost. You know what I mean? Like when you're watching this Giants all the time and you're like, man, like what does good football look like? The one outlier there is that the pass rush is good. Like that's a legitimate NFL pass rush. So I'm excited to see, the Giants kind of exploit that. But I think too, this has to be a bounce back game, like you said, for this this run game. Devin Singletary, you're a little bit healthier now, obviously. Tyrone Tracy was kind of looked at early on like, hey, they have something in this kid, a 6th-round pick. Did Joe Shane actually get somebody in the draft? This is all good, positive stuff. And then, he has however many carries last week for however many yards. It was low. I don't know off the top of my head, but let's see that. Let's have a bounce back game for that. I'm not expecting anything in the pass game to go down on national TV in front of a primetime audience on Monday Night Football. Let's see what Tyrone Tracy could do. Let's have that. This is the one thing this year where, that could be an interesting, storyline kind of thing. So yeah, I'm very intrigued with that. And I'm also curious too, not necessarily, this wasn't necessarily the Giants should regret this because, Russell Wilson obviously in Denver wasn't a world beater. But if you'll remember, he did visit with the Giants this in March, I think it was. And, that was when he was a free agent. He, got bought out or not bought out, but cut by the Broncos. And, they had a very positive visit and the Giants told him hey, well, Jones is still the starter. So, with that in mind, he was like, hey, yeah, I'm going to go do, I'll go to Pittsburgh where I can, win a job right away. So I'm kind of curious to see is there something in there in Russell where he's like, hey, I'm going to ball out against the Giants here. He looked fine last week and that was good. So I'm eager to see if there's any semblance of a revenge game factor there, just because, story ideas are few and far between with this team. Give me something here.
It is so. I feel for you guys. I've been there. 2020. It is rough.
Yeah.
It's bad stuff to try to do when you're in a team because you're trying to pull teeth out of some of these guys at times. But yeah, it gets fun. And when you look at this game, is there any way they find a way to upset the Steelers? Do have the Commanders coming up. The Commanders are surprisingly, not somehow, they've earned it. Surprisingly at the top of the NFC East right now, playing good football. Do you see the Giants being a trap game, especially with coming off of that big loss to the Eagles that the Steelers take them lightly?
Here's what I think. I think the only chance they have, this is maybe the game of the season. So far, the one game with Seattle where I was like, all right, they have absolutely no chance. This defense is insane. They're, league best numbers. And it's just, the personnel there is just overwhelming for this Giants team. I had, I thought Seattle could be a dark horse, and they still might be, but just a really good deep playoff team this year. I went into that game thinking guaranteed loss for this Giants team. I'm going into this game thinking guaranteed loss for this Giants team. The Giants beat the Seahawks that week. Maybe they'll do the same thing against Pittsburgh and pull something out of wherever. I'm not banking on it though. I would not predict it. I think with all the factors we talked about, Steelers pass rush, that's pretty much all you need right there is and obviously they're overwhelming secondary too. Mixed with the fact that, Russell Wilson is finally getting some decent quarterback play there. Justin Fields was obviously up and down in the first couple of weeks, but he showed some flashes. But Russell Wilson, have some stability there, and he'll be starting this week. Yeah, I think there's no chance, but any given Sunday, right?
Yeah. As long as they don't have Dable starting to pull out the Pacino speech, going out clawing with their fingernails or something like that. And if he ever did that, I think that really would kind of scare me and see, okay, yeah, this guy's done. In terms of that.
And I will say too, in terms of, in 2 weeks they got the Commanders. The only way they find a way to upset them is if their defense, which somehow is playing unbelievable right now, was not expecting that early in the year, and they're lying too. Somehow turns into a pumpkin. And what's Jaden Daniels' status? I don't know. Probably I think Quinn said he's week to week. So if that week to week also ties into the Giants game, then yeah, maybe they have a chance at upsetting these next two opponents.
And then all of a sudden we're back to where we were beforehand. What's going on? Yeah, I can't take it. And finally, we go to our overtime question. It's every week we try to give a question where try to make us think or about stuff that we've been through or stuff that's going on around the league, make you think that. Well, in honor of last Sunday's game where it was rough to do, Ryan, what was the worst loss you ever had to cover?
So I want to spin this in a positive direction because I feel like it's always doom and gloom. So I'm going to go back to when I was covering hockey, and it was the worst loss in terms of, oh man, like it would have been cool to see, this happen, but it was the best because of how dramatic it was, and like even in the loss, the post game locker room was amazing. So the Devils had won 13 games in a row. Their franchise record, that was their franchise record. They could have tied, or they could have broken it had they beat the Toronto Maple Leafs. So there were 3 disallowed goals, 3 goals that were, that the Devils scored in that game that the refs called back. 3 times it happened during the whole game. It was so chaotic that at the end of the game, Devils fans, they were throwing chicken tenders, they were throwing beers on the ice. It was awesome. It was
Not the tenders.
most fun loss I've ever remembered covering. So much so that in the post-game locker room, it was a close game too. I've never seen a team that happy after a post-game, in a post-game loss locker room. Cause it was just like, oh man, like, yeah, like we lost, but like we basically won kind of thing. Like, cause those 3 goals, and they were BS calls too, if I remember correctly. But yeah, the quotes afterwards were amazing. Like, the guys were just like, talking about, oh yeah, this happened, then this happened, then this happened. Oh, and I got hit with a chicken tender. So it was great, man. That was a great loss to cover. But in terms of bad losses, like to answer your question, like how you meant it, this last week's was up there, man. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh man, like I can only imagine, like, we've heard the stories about how batteries came from like veterans. I can't imagine what the players' reaction were, because I still remember Mark Sanchez asking for the guy for a hot dog. So I wonder who was actually really hungry down there for the Devils.
Right.
Like, oh, a tender. Okay, cool. I'm hungry. Keep this in there. In terms of that, oh goodness, for me, it's tough. I go back to one of the ones that I hate. You cover college football, you know how it is on that.
Yep.
When in terms of that, but when it's like the seniors' last day in a bowl game or what have you, some of them don't know if they're going to play in the league, some what have you. I just remember, of all things, because it was speaking AAC, I covered Temple football for a little bit, and hearing it was the Boca Raton Bowl, and you see in Toledo, and that was when they had Kareem Hunt, and you see the Owls had Tyler Matakevich, who was the Steelers as well too, and now the Buffalo Bills and everything. He was the defensive player, the Nagurski award for the best linebacker. He won the defensive player of the year. So it's all stuff. And then you see just Toledo, Kareem Hunt just run everything down. And he had I want to say Hassan Reich was like a freshman or whatever. Like they had all these NFL players that Temple did on their roster, and he just got run through. It was like, what the heck is this? And then, like I mentioned, as seniors, I've never seen so many. And that was the first time I really got to see like the emotional side of sports, because beforehand I wasn't like this. Some of the other stuff, like they had never really gone to bowl games or what have you. Was I have is few and far between, but the raw emotion you see in that, and it's like, wait a minute, you guys really feel this in a bowl game between an AAC team and a MAC team, and you guys are really feeling it. It really sat in. I was like, okay, yeah, this really, you really truly get the true feeling for sports, and it's like, all right, it really runs the spectrum. I learned a lot that day. It was interesting to see. And long story short, yeah, everybody wound up, like a lot of those guys wound up being in the NFL. Heck, I think Deion Dawkins was on one of those teams as well too. They were stacked, and they still couldn't make the playoff.
Jeez.
Yeah, or not the playoff, but the Cotton Bowl that 1 year.
Right.
Thank you, PJ Flecker rowed a boat. Yeah, with Western Michigan is stunk. But yeah, it's sometimes you get some these losses. You can, I know the old adage, you can learn a lot more from a loss than a win. Well, now some of these losses are just disrespectful this year.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine covering that when I think it was the Dolphins Broncos, when the Dolphins put a 70 burger.
Oh my
I couldn't imagine doing that.
The best part is about those games, though, as you know, like, your story is pretty much written already. You can. Yeah. There's some games where you're struggling deadline there, where it's a coin flip, like what your lead's going to be, what the story's going to be. But yeah, that game, those games are almost, if you're covering a bad team kind of thing, it's like, all right, at least make this a blowout so this can be easy for me.
I've been there before. I know the feeling, man.
No doubt.
Well, Ryan, as always, thank you very much for joining us. And make sure to read Ryan and Daryl Slater's stuff on NJ.com/Giants. They'll have stuff coming up for the Steelers game, everything leading up to it, for the practices, the injuries, the analysis, everything you need to know about the Giants coming up. So for Ryan, I'm Chris. Everybody have a good one. See ya.